I'm sorry about your daughter, Joel. But I've lost people too.
You have no idea what loss is.
Everybody I have cared for has either died or left me.
Everyone fucking except for you.
What's up everybody, welcome back to the channel and welcome to episode 6 of The Last of Us that's titled Kin, because it's very much based on the Miller brothers themselves. Now so far this series has been perfection in my opinion. It's the best adaptation to any source material that I've ever watched on a TV screen. HBO are pulling it off perfectly. The actors are amazing, they're perfectly cast. In this episode, this one is packed full of content again from the game. It's packed full of Easter eggs from the game.
What's her name?
Shimmer.
Shimmer.
But not only is it packed full of those Easter eggs, they're actually in reference, a lot of them, to The Last of Us Part 2 because of the whole thing with the settlement, what you don't actually see in The Last of Us Part 1. Now as the video goes, we're going to get into that, but let's go from the beginning. Now, as you know, the last episode, it finished with Henry taking his own life, and that's how they start up this episode, because as the game does as well, it takes a big time jump at that point. Because in the game, for those of you who haven't played, it's kind of based over a 12-month period and it goes season to season. So when Henry takes his own life in the game, it jumps to fall from the summer, and it's kind of just like skips the whole process of Joel and Ellie getting to the dam, Tommy's dam. In the game it moves across 3 months and we see him at this cabin over in Wyoming, which has got the lovely characters Marlon and Florence.
Holy.
Now Marlon's played by this actor called Graham Greene. You might recognise, he's been in a lot of movies over the years. He's notably in Dances with Wolves, played a part in The Green Mile. He played a voice role in Red Dead Redemption 2 for the gaming fans, and his wife, she's played by this actress Elaine Miles, and it's comedy gold, I think, this scene. That, you know, in the very short roles, they're not in it for very long, but you know, you could easily make a spin-off of these two characters and create their own show. I thought they were absolutely fantastic in this. It gave me a few laughs, as I'm sure it did many other viewers.
Why did you shoot him?
The gun's all the way over there.
But yeah, so Joel and Ellie at this point have been travelling a long time together. So in this scene you'll notice that Joel has a map and he tells Marlon to point out where they are in Wyoming, and it better match what his wife said.
Where here? Exactly where? And your answer better be the same as your wife's.
Now in the game, Joel uses this technique in an interrogation scene that'll come later in the story, and a lot of the fans of the game, they want to see this scene. It's a very cool scene. It's got like a very Man on Fire vibe to it, if you would.
But you're gonna mark it on the map. And it better be the same exact spot your buddy points to.
But hopefully they do use that scene, because it is quite a brutal one. Maybe they won't, who knows, but it will be coming up in a couple of episodes time if they do. It's also referenced in The Last of Us Part 2 by Ellie herself as well.
Point to where she is on this map. And then you better fucking match up.
So Marlon tells them, you know, you don't go to the other side of the river, it means death, and that's what they perceive as that. And then Joel and Ellie move on, and in true Ellie fashion, she takes a rabbit from outside Marlon's house. Joel has what looks like a bit of a panic attack. Now this is not something that they show in the game, but again it's just more evidence to suggest that he's this like normal guy who's struggling more. You know, he's older, he's really been through the mill, he's got the massive stress of losing his daughter, and you know, he's got this massive stress of taking on Ellie and looking at her as like a surrogate daughter, if you would, and it's taking a toll on him physically. It's not something you see in the game. It's a nice touch for the TV show, showing that humanity of Joel again, if you would. As they move on, you see some of these beautifully shot cinematic scenes, really nice touches, using that awesome music from The Last of Us itself. We then come on to a really interesting scene at a campfire. Now, again, this was never seen in the game, but was in the actual concept art of The Last of Us Part 1. I'll put that up on screen. So this is some of the concept art they used for the first game that never actually made the game. And then they also used in The Last of Us Part 1 remake for PlayStation 5, there's actually a model viewer of this scene, which is really cool, and they never used it in the game, but they've put it in the TV show to have more character building and more back and forth with Ellie and Joel, and as a fan, really nice touch. So also, while we're at the campfire scene, Joel and Ellie make reference again to space, and in episode 3, if you remember, she made reference to the car looking like a spaceship. It's a clear nod to The Last of Us Part 2 and Ellie's love for space and astronauts, and she talks about her favourite astronauts in this scene, including Sally Ride, who was like the first American woman to go in space.
Neil Armstrong, Buzz Aldrin, Jim Lovell, but you know who my favorite is?
Sally Ride.
Sally fucking Ride. Best astronaut name ever.
But this is a massive nod to The Last of Us Part 2, and you know, without giving any spoilers away, those guys who think the story's quite emotional, until you see the space scene in The Last of Us Part 2, you haven't seen an emotional scene in this story, because that's one of the saddest moments, if you would, in this whole story. You know, again, it shows a little bit of weakness from Joel. He wants to stay up to protect Ellie. He wants to, you know, cover the whole night while she can get some sleep. And then he wakes up, he's passed out. He obviously didn't mean to, and Ellie's stood guarding him. And I think in some of these moments, it makes Joel feel like slightly embarrassed, and he keeps getting this perception that he's failing himself, he's failing the people that he's trying to protect. And again, that's coming through really strongly in his character. Joel and Ellie, they head across the bridge over the river. Another great Easter egg and a nod to the games that Ellie's trying to whistle.
I'm learning how to whistle.
You don't know how to whistle?
Does it sound like I know how to whistle?
No.
Now in the games, if you just stood around sometimes, you'll see Ellie doing this. She'll be standing there trying to whistle, and another nod, another Easter egg.
Are you all right?
I'm trying to learn how to whistle.
You don't know how to whistle.
Well, does it sound like I know how to whistle?
The little things, you know. So just before they head to Tommy's settlement, you see the dam. Now, I didn't think they were going to use this in the TV show, because it's kind of a big undertaking, the actual dam. They use it to power the town. Now, the big difference in the show versus the game is that all these scenes that you see in the settlement actually take place at the dam, and you don't actually see the settlement. You only see it from a distance when Joel comes back for Ellie, and at the end of the game. The settlement is very much there, but you only see it from a distance. So this is why it plays a really good reference to The Last of Us Part 2, that you see the settlement in a lot in The Last of Us Part 2. So these Easter eggs that come in this episode are very much based on the second part of the story of the game, which is really, really cool for the fans. Actual HBO podcast for The Last of Us TV show, Neil Druckmann actually says that they wanted to use the settlement in The Last of Us Part 1. They ended up just doing all these scenes at the dam, and it were basically a budget and a time issue when it come to creating the game. So the ideas were very much there, but they just didn't implement them into the game because of those reasons. We come to the moment where Ellie realises that the river of death, as Marlon puts it, it's probably this actual second river they get to, and then shortly after you see the horses come over the hill, and it's clearly the people from Tommy's settlement. It just shows you that, you know, Marlon and his wife think about, if you go over the river, it's just death. But, you know, it's probably in reference to people like this who in their own way are just trying to survive themselves, but it's just other people's perception on each other. But ultimately, it's a world where people are trying to survive, and they're not necessarily all bad, you see. And then there's a bit of a dramatic moment. The guy's got him at gunpoint, and they get the dog. I made reference to this dog in a trailer breakdown I did for this, thinking it was probably Buckley the dog. Maybe it's not actually Buckley the dog, this one. They don't actually call it by its name. Buckley the dog's a very gentle dog that's not really vicious at all in the game, so maybe we'll come across Buckley in another episode.
Hey, old timer. Yeah, get a good scratch.
It's quite a dramatic moment where the dog sniffs them out if they're infected. You think, oh, there's a problem here with Ellie. And again, Joel's in this situation where You know, he feels useless and helpless to Ellie. At any moment, this dog could have attacked Ellie, could have killed her, and he's just standing there frozen, and he gets really upset about this moment when he's talking to Tommy later in the episode. And then that introduces Maria. She asks Joel what his name is. Maria plays Tommy's wife in the game. She's played by this actress Rutina Wesley, and a lot of you will probably recognise her from True Blood. Again, I mentioned before, that's a show that I've never actually seen, but in this episode I think she plays Maria really well. She's a great character, another good addition to the show. We come to Tommy's settlement, and the Easter eggs in this one are clear off the scale when it comes to The Last of Us Part 2. First of all, you know, you've got the Tipsy Bison. There's a few big scenes in the second game based in that bar. You know, there's you see the kids playing with snowball fights, and you know, the Last of Us Part 2, you have a snowball fight with the children to learn the mechanics of the game at the very start of the game. So the biggest Easter egg in this episode, by far, is Dina, ladies and gentlemen. The girl that Ellie sees staring at her while she's eating dinner is obviously Dina from The Last of Us Part 2. Now, Dina doesn't play any part of The Last of Us Part 1, but she was very much part of the settlement for a long time. So it's quite normal for them to put her there. Obviously, Ellie just doesn't think anything of it, but Dina plays a huge role in the second game. So when they do the season 2 of the show, you are going to see this character. Whether she's played by the same actress, we don't know. That was very much Dina, and as a gamer and a Last of Us fans concerned, that is the biggest Easter egg by far in this episode.
Couple months old. You want a pet her?
Yeah, what's her name?
Shimmer.
Shimmer. Hey, Shimmer.
And then we come to the big moment where Joel finally claps eyes on Tommy. There's that like emotional get together again for the brothers that haven't seen each other for a while. And at this point, Joel actually sees that he didn't need to come here to save Tommy, and he sees that Tommy's thriving, and then you kind of see a few little cracks in Joel's personality where, you know, It's felt like he's failing. He doesn't want that to come over to Tommy. He feels like he's the bigger brother than he looks after him. But Tommy's very much moved on, and he's become this better person. He's created something, you know, he's created something to live for. And I don't think it resonates initially very well at all with Joel. We see immediately that Tommy and Maria are married. Now in the game, again, you see this all unfold at the dam, and he finds this out immediately when they meet up in the game as well.
Ma'am, thanks for not blowing my head off.
Would have been embarrassing, considering you're my brother-in-law.
Well, Maria is family, actually.
Oh shit. Congrats.
A few of these scenes are very much the same. It's just set at the dam instead. One really cool thing I think about this is, you know, you go to have the important conversation with Tommy in the game, and Ellie goes off with Maria, but you don't actually get to see that conversation with Maria and Ellie. So it's really cool that they've utilised this in the show, because you don't have to just look at it from Joel's eyes. Joel and Tommy, they're sat in like the Tipsy Bison, they share a drink together, and I think Joel's a bit overcome on how well Tommy's done, and he tells them that they're going to have a baby. Now in the game, that's not a thing, so in the TV show, I don't know how they're going to play that one out. That's going to be interesting to see what happens with that one. You can see Joel's getting angry. There's a few own truths from Tommy about the past, and Joel's pretty bitter. He essentially was just trying to protect Tommy. Tommy's moved on. I think it's a little bit of a bitter pill for Joel to swallow. They have a bit of a disagreement. Doesn't tell him the whole truth at this point about why he's here, about Ellie. Clearly Tommy can see through that. He storms out, and we see a moment again where he's starting to have these pains, like a bit of a panic attack, and pretty emotional moment where he thinks for a moment he can see Sarah. You see this lady from the rear, and she's got the same hair as Sarah, and she's got a child, and it's like a moment to show Joel what his life could have been, and you know where he would have been at that point in his life. And one of the reasons why it's bringing all these painful moments on for him, it's affecting his health. But yeah, just just more like emotional moments for the TV show that you don't really see in the game. We then come to this scene where Ellie's, she gets out of the shower, Maria's left her some clothing, and she's also left her a menstrual cup. Now, on the HBO podcast, Craig Mazin made a point of saying, you know, half of the people on the planet are women, and these are the daily issues that women have to deal with, and it never gets mentioned in TV shows and movies. So they actually made a point of this, because obviously in a post-apocalyptic scenario, these are still the issues that women are going to have to deal with. So it made a point of that, and he also made a point of it back in episode 3, I believe, where Ellie finds the Tampax at the beginning of the episode. So yeah, that's Craig Mazin's idea. He wanted to make that point because nobody ever really does, so just put it in there. And Ellie makes a little bit of a joke to Maria, like that was a weird gift, but Maria is obviously just trying to take care of the younger girls in the settlement. And then she meets up with Maria, and they have that conversation that you don't get to see in the game. Joel and Tommy go off for their conversation. Maria takes Ellie off, but as you play as Joel in the game, you kind of only see everything from his point of view. In a TV show, they can totally delve away from that. So it's nice that this conversation that you know Ellie had with Maria in the game, you get to see it in the TV show. And it's also where she tells Ellie about Sarah.
I'm sorry about your kids.
It's okay. And kid, just Kevin. Sarah was Joel's daughter.
And Ellie didn't know that. I don't think I think Maria realised that as soon as she told her. She tries telling her a few untruths about Joel, which she already knew about, and she's saying, well, you know, well, Tommy killed people too, and she gets kind of on a level with Maria. You know, both of them aren't stupid. Maria comes from like an affluent background. She was like a lawyer or a district attorney assistant. Yeah, it's just put that seed in Ellie's head. She's finally realised about Sarah. She's been with Joel a long time in the story at this point, and she's only just realised that he had a daughter. Kind of explains a few things to Ellie on how Joel is and how he holds himself.
Be careful who you put your faith in. The only people who can betray us are the ones we trust.
Now in the game there's also this section where they're looking upon the town where Joel takes Ellie back, and Tommy talks about briefly how, you know, the kids will be watching movies tonight.
There she is. Kids will be watching movies tonight.
Again, in the TV show, we get to see that, and they sat watching this 70s movie, Richard Dreyfuss movie called The Goodbye Girl, I believe. They talked about this on the podcast. It's got relevance to the story, with a guy coming in, kind of taking on a little girl, and this trust thing and all that, and everything means something. And even the movie that they're watching, one of the emotional scenes in this is when Tommy and Joel finally have the real conversation, you know, not the one that Joel's trying to bat him off with. You know, you can see Joel's a little bit broken, he's trying to fix his shoe, he's hurt his hand. Shout out to the workbench as well in the background, you know, another nod to the game where you fix up your weapons and whatnot. Pedro Pascal in this scene, he really goes to town with the emotion. He pulls it off beautifully. You know, I really want to see these people get awards for these roles, because you know, I might be biased because I love this show, I love this story, but they are very, very good at what they're doing right here. But this is an emotional scene. It's the scene that you see in the dam with Tommy.
I've been on quite the adventure, little brother.
I reckon it's got something to do with that girl.
It's got everything to do with that little girl.
Well, go on then.
She's immune.
He talks about Ellie, and it brings more emotion than it does in the game, this scene, because he talks about his weakness, you know, how the guy got the upper hand on him back in Kansas City, his age, and how he's slowed down, and he states that, you know, he's going to get killed and that he needs to pass her off to Tommy, and, you know, it comes through with a hell of a lot of emotion, this scene.
Never done. It's failure. Again and again.
You want me to take her?
I'm just gonna get her killed, I know it. I know it.
And then it moves on to What's the best parallel to the game in this show by far is the big scene where Joel finally comes across Ellie. Now in the game, because it's set at the dam, Ellie overhears the conversation as she does in the show, but she takes a horse and she runs away, and you have to battle through a few hunters to get to her, you know, a bit more gameplay, a bit more fighting, and you finally catch up with Ellie, and she's like hiding in a farmhouse, but it's mimicking in the show that the same room that she's in the settlement, so that they could just take that scene completely out of the fact that she runs away. You know, she's just sitting in the house that they provided for her. But this is definitely my favourite parallel to the game. It's beautifully done by the actors. It's a very, very big moment in the game, possibly one of the best cinematics in the whole story, and it's a very emotional scene.
Is this really all they had to worry about? Boys, movies, deciding which shirt goes with which skirt. It's bizarre.
Admit that you wanted to get rid of me the whole time. Not her, you know.
What?
Maria told me about Sarah.
Ellie?
Maria told me about Sarah and...
No.
Mighty thin ice here.
I'm sorry about your daughter, Joel.
Don't say another word.
But I have lost people too.
You have no idea what
I'm
loss
sorry
is.
about your daughter, Joel.
Everyone I have
lost
cared
people
for
too.
has either died
You have
or
no
left
idea
me.
what loss is.
Everyone
Everybody
except
I've
for you.
cared for has either died or left me. Everybody
Don't tell me
fucking
that I
except
would be
for
safer
you.
with someone else.
So
Because
don't
the truth
tell
is
me
I
that
would
I'd be
just be
safe
more
with
scared.
somebody else, because the truth is I would just be more scared.
You're right. You're not my daughter.
You're right.
And I sure as hell ain't your dad.
You're not my daughter. And I sure as hell ain't your dad.
And of course, both characters get emotional. Joel storms out saying they're going to go their separate ways. He's very hurt about the Sarah thing. You know, it comes across in the game as it does in the show. It's more like bonding, if you would, between the two characters, even though Joel's trying to dismiss it. And then it brings you to the scene where Tommy's going to take Ellie to find the fireflies, and of course Joel's there waiting with saddling up the horse. In the game, it's when they arrive back from the journey from the farmhouse where you pick up Ellie to take her back to the settlement, and you see the scene where you're looking at the settlement from a distance, and that's this very moment right here where you see Joel in the stables with Ellie. It's quite even though it's an emotional moment, it's quite a comedic moment and all, where he offers to give Ellie the choice and she just thrusts the bag into him. I thought that was quite a funny moment actually.
Better off with Tommy.
Let's go.
Okay.
Another funny moment again is bonding with her, helping her out to shoot. She's just passing it off saying the gun's rubbish, it's the aim, and he just shoots the target straight away, leading to a little bit more banter to the characters.
Slow.
You're gonna shoot this thing or get it pregnant. It isn't gonna work, it doesn't aim right. You dick.
And then they have like a 5-day journey. Again, it's progressing quite far in the story to the University of Eastern Colorado, as it is. And they're having the conversation, and he's telling her about how American football works. It's ripped straight out of the game again. As you get to the university on horseback in the game, they're having that same conversation.
That's right.
Man, it's confusing.
Hey, you just gotta play it a couple times. It all makes sense.
The university scenes look great. It looks just out of the game. The whole thing with the monkeys, again, straight from the source material. Now in this scene in the game, again, you have to open some doors to get through to different sections of the university. You have to fight off a lot of infected. There's clickers, there's bloaters. But again, in the game, you've got to do that. It's a game. You've got to have a lot of fight sequences to progress. I didn't expect anything in the way of infected in this episode, actually. You know, I think a lot of fans were disappointed that there were no action in this episode. There were no infected. I kind of expected it. It's an hour-long episode, and it didn't surprise me at all that they just took all that element away from it. Obviously, quite quickly seeing that the Fireflies were at the university. When I played the game for the first time, I was telling my wife as we watched it that when you get to this point, the first time you've seen the story, it kind of makes it feel like you're at the end of the game, at the end of the story, but you're very much not. When you realise the Fireflies are not there, you realise, oh, there's going to be a lot more to do now, a lot more travel, and it makes you think there's some infected. It's just the monkeys again, exactly how it is in the game. Another little Easter egg, you see the map of where they've moved to, and there's a little post-it note right there that says St Mary's, which is St Mary's Hospital, where they need to head to in the rest of the story. Which brings us to the point where the hunters arrive. This happens just like it is in the game, but there's more men. They're armed, you're shooting back and forth. Try to make the escape, and you see the guy swings at Joel with a bat and he hits the bat, which smashes the bat. Now at this point in the game, it's a little bit more dramatic. I knew they wouldn't do it like this because it just looks like it could be a bit over the top. You know, Joel's fighting with a guy and he falls from like a first floor balcony, and he lands on some rebar that goes straight through him. If you put that in the show, it'd probably come across a little bit over the top and unrealistic. So, you know, he's just having this fight with a guy, and the butt of the bat sticks into Joel, which injures him, of course, and he does the choke, and he kills the guy. And that another nod to the game, because when you're stealthily moving along, you grab guys, and that's how you take them out without causing any noises to alert other people. So yeah, I knew that we're going to end right at this scene. Joel's injured. It's got to a point now where Ellie's panicking. She's going to have to look after him, and it leads you amazingly into the DLC for the left behind content of the game, which is going to be episode 7. Now episode 7, it's going to be very much a flashback about Ellie's story on how she got bitten with her friend Riley. It's been mentioned a few times in the episodes about Riley.
To sneak out. A terrorist? Was Riley a terrorist?
So just to explain to people who's not played the game, DLC means downloadable content. So you've got the game itself, and they released this separate story as a downloadable extra to play, and it's based over the part where, you know, Ellie's looking after Joel, but it just flashbacks on a story from the beginning. The fact that they're going to do that for the show and have an episode literally based on this downloadable story called Left Behind, which they call in the episode, it's absolutely fantastic for the fans of the game. Everybody got a little excited about that when they saw the original trailer, and it showed you Riley and Ellie on the carousel, and it's like, oh man, you know, they're putting the DLC in the game. The fact that there's a whole episode catered for that's really cool. Again, another fantastic episode. 60 minutes of emotion and character building and story. No action much really, no infected, but still the perfect execution of this part of the story. A lot of ground covered. It's going to lead us into that Last of Us Left Behind DLC episode absolutely perfectly. Great performances again by the actors, and this episode ends with a Depeche Mode song again, Never Let Me Down Again, what you see in episode 1, and it's a slower, more sad, mellow version of the song. It's actually sung by Craig Mazin's daughter, this sequence for this song at the end of the credits, which is a really nice little touch. So So yeah, that were episode 6, guys. I might do a trailer breakdown for episode 7 if I get time. It's 6 episodes in, it's absolutely perfect. Can't wait to get into the next one. So with that being said, I shall see you in the next one. Take care.